Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Grassroots Victory Lap Panel session. My name is Aisha, and I'm 22 years old, and I'm from the United Kingdom, specifically the West Midlands. Now, first and foremost, everyone has a role to play when it comes to combating climate change. Climate change was a story that fell mostly on indifferent ears, but this past year we have seen tremendous progress around policies that support climate restoration. As a climate restoration advocate, I believe it is also my duty to speak for the countless people who aren't able to speak for themselves. This is why, whenever the opportunity arises, I advocate and share my restoration journey around the world, especially within Europe, as my job as an external relations assistant allows me to meet with a vast range of policymakers that really have an interest in young people's views on climate change. I believe that it is really important for young people to participate in decision making and sharing of their restoration or climate story as it promotes positive civic action. Through participating in decision making, outreach, and volunteering, the youth can really connect with a wide range of people in their communities. And besides sharing my story with various policymakers, this experience encouraged me to also create a restoration policy report for an NGO called Think Pacific, which really details the restoration practices that Fiji, which the report was based upon, can implement to sustain their ecosystems in the long term. My report offered an initial exploration into the concept of climate restoration and how every organization, company, and government should introduce restoration policies when it comes to combating climate change. The restoration progress that we will hear about in this panel is phenomenal. Our actions and deliveries are finally advancing, and it could only go up from there. Thank you, and now I will pass it on to the host of today's session, Rick.
Thanks so much, Aisha. It's wonderful to have you with us today, but also just for all of the fantastic work that you're doing in the UK, in Europe, and around the world for climate restoration. Thank you. So many of you met me in earlier sessions today. For those of you who have not, my name is Rick Wayman, and I'm the CEO of the Foundation for Climate Restoration. We've got three fantastic guests with us today, and I'll be introducing them in just a moment. As Aisha mentioned, we're going to be talking about the victories that we've had in climate restoration related policies, in carbon dioxide removal related policies in the past year. There are a lot of them. It's really exciting. And even since our last forum just a few months ago, we've got a number of new victories to celebrate. So I'm glad that you're here with us today so we can celebrate together. Congressman Paul D. Tonko is an 8th term member of the U.S. House of Representatives, representing New York's 20th congressional district in the capital region, including the cities of Albany, Schenectady, Troy, and Saratoga Springs. He's the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Environment, Manufacturing, and Critical Materials. In addition to serving on the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee, he is also a member of the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations and the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Along with his committee duties, Representative Tonko chairs the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition. Our next panelist is Megha Ragavan. Megha works on carbon dioxide removal policy and market development for Open Air, an all-volunteer organization dedicated to advancing carbon dioxide removal. Megha is also active in the CDR sector as an independent advisor. We also have with us today Duncan Kairuki. Duncan is the product lead at Octavia Carbon. Octavia Carbon builds machines that filter carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to store it underground and help reverse climate change. As product lead, he designs the machines that capture the CO2 from the air. He comes from a farming community that has been devastated by drought, and therefore has seen the effects of climate change firsthand. He's one of the many Kenyans choosing to fight back against climate change by building solutions of the future. His goals are to grow the direct air capture industry in Kenya, to create employment, grow its economy, and reverse climate change. Again, welcome to all three of you. Thanks so much for being with us today. I want to first turn it over to Representative Tonko for some introductory remarks.
Rick, and certainly an honor to be with all of you today. It's very kind of you to, on behalf of the Foundation for Climate Restoration, offer this invitation. And I really welcome being a panelist with Megha and Duncan. So thank you, Rick Wayman, for your leadership. Thank you, Climate Restoration advocates, for all of your efforts, and certainly the Foundation for Climate Restoration as we continue as those who are pushing this very important business to reach all members of Congress and build support for ambitious and yet urgent climate action, including helping to win members' support for a bill that I've worked on called the Carbon Dioxide Removal Leadership Act. It's an honor to be part of this event. For my part, I've spent my career pushing for science-based solutions to tackle climate change. And I've seen firsthand how grassroots advocacy can make a difference in getting the policies prioritized with elected officials. Since joining Congress in 2009, I have fought for federal government investments in clean energy innovation. Because of these investments, we have seen revolutions in batteries, in solar, in wind, and in several other technologies. And now we need that same commitment for that next generation of technologies: direct air capture, clean hydrogen, and offshore wind. These are the solutions that are going to help us get to that finish line and get over that finish line to a net zero economy. And because they are new emerging industries, federal involvement can ensure that we get them right from the start, by requiring projects be developed responsibly with robust community engagement and strong labor and environmental standards. That is the benefit of having the public sector partner with businesses, with NGOs, and with academics on these cutting edge industries. And I'm so proud of how far we have come under the President Biden administration. The 117th Congress, which covered 2021 and 2022 as calendar years, has been called the most productive Congress since the 1960s. And much of that progress has been around climate action. I will note that we did that with a very slim margin in the House of Representatives and a dead even lineup in the United States Senate, unlike the 60s, where there was a lot more room to negotiate. First, the bipartisan infrastructure law included billions of dollars to strengthen our electric grid, build a national network of EV charging stations, enable schools and transit agencies to purchase electric buses, and many more critical investments, including billions of dollars to support the development of direct air capture hubs. Second, we passed the CHIPS and Science Act, which is going to make historic investments in research, in development, and in manufacturing to promote American global economic competitiveness. It will support the development of critical and strategic industries, such as semiconductors, which are essential to not only our computers and our phones, but clean energy technologies like electric vehicles and, yes, solar panels. And finally, this was followed up with the Inflation Reduction Act, $370 billion worth in the next decade to deploy clean energy and address environmental injustices. And this number can be even higher if individuals and businesses take full advantage of all the incentives in the law. The IRA includes long-term extensions of key tax credits for wind, for solar, for electric vehicles, and even carbon removal. It makes major investments in American manufacturing, and it has bonuses for clean energy projects that use high labor standards. These are the types of policies that will not only help us address climate change, but will reshape our economy so that American clean energy industries are high-quality job creators for decades to come. It has been estimated that the IRA will result in greenhouse gas emissions reductions of some 40% by 2030. This is truly amazing, but I know we all agree our work is far from done. Decisions we are making today will determine whether we succeed or fail in achieving net zero emissions by no later than 2050. I want to stress that even under the best case scenario, we will not be able to reach net zero without major reductions in emissions. Rapidly reducing emissions is absolutely necessary. But if we do not start to develop the technologies that we will need for that last 10%, as they indicate, of decarbonization today, they will not be ready when we need them into 2030s and 40s. So CDR is also the only way for us to address our historical emissions. Many different removal technologies, such as direct air capture, are very promising, but they are also new and they are also expensive. They need to scale massively, and they need customers that are willing to pay for this service. Private commitments are beginning to step up, but in the end, carbon removal will need federal policy intervention to scale to where it needs to be. So I am very excited that DOE is moving forward with developing DAC hubs with funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law. And building upon that investment, I introduced the Carbon Dioxide Removal Leadership Act. This bill was put together with the input from dozens of incredible stakeholders and would require the Department of Energy to pay for the removal of a specific number of tons each year. Over time, the number of tons goes up, and the maximum price DOE can pay goes down as a way to continue to drive cost reductions. Under this proposal, DOE is required to follow best practices for monitoring, reporting, and verification of removals and prioritize domestic jobs, environmental justice, and innovative technologies. This bill would guarantee demand that can help jumpstart the industry and provide that long-term certainty at significant scale. DOE is great at fostering innovation, and I believe this is just one approach that could be effective, but it is not the only option. And I look forward to continued conversations about what is the right role for the federal government in carbon removal. We know the cost of climate inaction is high, and carbon management can be an important role in our fight to decarbonize. So I look forward to hearing the other panelists' perspectives on how carbon removal can fit into our climate solutions toolbox. And most importantly, how advocates can help build upon the progress that has been made to bring even greater support for climate restoration in the years to come. So again, thank you for the kind invitation to join with you, and look forward to the remainder of the program.
Thank you so much, Representative Tonko, for those opening remarks and for your leadership. It is so reassuring to have elected officials, especially on the national level, who get it and who are doing something about it. This is going to take this movement, the success of this movement is going to take all kinds of different parts of society working together, elected officials, activists, innovators, philanthropists, you name it. We've all got to come together. So I'm so glad that you're leading the way with our national elected officials here in the United States. Thank you. Next, I want to turn it over to Megha Ragavan for her introductory remarks.
Thanks, Rick. And thank you to everyone at Foundation for Climate Restoration. It's really lovely to be here on this panel alongside Representative Tonko and Duncan, who I know are also doing such great work around climate and CDR in particular. Rick gave us a bit of background on Open Air, so I won't dwell too long on it, but just very briefly, Open Air is a volunteer-led organization, and we work on CDR policy and market development, as well as some R&D. And CDR is really the focus for all of Open Air's work. The idea being that while a lot of great work is going on around decarbonization and all of these other things that need to happen, in parallel to that, we really need to be thinking already about developing a market and developing the technology for carbon dioxide removal so that when we need it for net zero or even net negative in 10 or 20 years' time, that technology is there and the market is there for us to operate CDR at scale. Open Air has been really successful over the last few years in promoting volunteer-led policies, which have progressed from ideas into actual policies that have been written, and even into some that have been passed, which has been really exciting. So the first policy that Open Air ever developed was called LECLA, or the Low Embodied Carbon Concrete Leadership Act. And the idea of that was to basically promote the decarbonization of concretes and buildings, one of the most carbon-intensive sectors really in the world. And so we're very excited that that passed recently at a state level. I think just earlier this year was signed into law. And that's really the first successful policy that Open Air has been able to put forward, develop from start to finish, and see through to being signed off. Another really exciting policy at the local level that Open Air has been involved in is based in the Four Corners Carbon Coalition. That's a collaboration between Boulder County, Flagstaff, Salt Lake City, and Santa Fe, in which these four local authorities have basically worked together to pool some resources and try to accelerate community-based forms of CDR in their region. So Open Air has really been looking at a lot of things at different levels of government, state level, local level, and also now thinking about doing more things at the national level. Another couple of things that are currently going on at the state level in the US are in Massachusetts and in California. In Massachusetts, we have Senate Bill 2096, or the CDRLA in Massachusetts, which, as Representative Tonko mentioned, is an idea to get the state to procure carbon removal and to support that market within the state of Massachusetts. And in California, we have Senate Bill 203, which is the California CDR Market Development Act, which is structured a bit differently, but similarly aims to promote CDR and do that work at the state level. A really exciting development for Open Air over the last 6 months to a year really is seeing a lot more members grow active in Europe. I'm personally based in the UK, so it's been really interesting to see how quickly that's really sprung up. And we've been involved in a number of different things. In the UK, where I'm based, we were involved in a consultation by the Business Energy Industrial Strategy Department, which essentially was asking for feedback from the public on how to address GGR, or greenhouse gas removals, which is what we call CDR in the UK. And Open Air made a really comprehensive set of recommendations for that, which we're hoping to see some of that be adopted going forward. And we'll hear back more on that later in the year. We also have some interesting policy going on being developed in Luxembourg, thinking about ways to sort of model ideas off the feed-in tariff that you may be familiar with. And there's different things going on in Germany, Spain. I mean, so many different European countries now that I'm starting to lose track. But it's really been great to see how many different countries Open Air's model has started to touch, and how these policies that have been developed in one jurisdiction have started to multiply and sort of grow into different areas around the US and more recently around the world.
Thanks so much, Megha. I really admire your work personally that you're getting done with Open Air, but also shout out to the whole Open Air team. You all just blow me away every day with the things that you're accomplishing. So thanks to all of you. I know a lot of you are tuning in today. Thank you so much for all that you're doing and the leadership that each of you are taking individually and collectively. Now I'd like to turn it over to Duncan Kairuki for your opening remarks.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Duncan Kairuki. I'm the product lead at Octavia Carbon. I would like to thank everyone who's here today and thank Rick for the invitation, and particularly give a shout out to Megha and the Open Air. Fun fact, Octavia's founding members met on Open Air, and we, as a way to give back, we open sourced our first prototype, which was our introduction to direct air capture. And that's what we do. We are a direct air capture startup here in Kenya. And what we do is we design, build, and deploy direct air capture machines here in Kenya. And our goal is to leverage Kenya's natural endowments to bring down the cost of direct air capture, or DAC. And the reason why we believe that Kenya is going to be the best place to do DAC is its geology, its wealth in renewable energy, and its talent. And we have the geology that can store the CO2 that we capture. We have a wealth of renewable energy. Our grid is 92% renewable and slated to be 100% renewable by 2030. And we have the cost-effective talent to manufacture this technology. This is hard tech, and we are very excited about the future that we have here in Kenya, and we all know the challenge that's ahead of us. It's a massive challenge to be able to remove that last 10% that Representative Tonko had talked about. And it's climate science estimates between 5 and 10 billion tons, and that is a huge challenge ahead of us. And we can't do it alone. We do need a lot of support to grow this industry. And we've had some wind in our sails over the past year or so, and there's been a lot of interest to creating a dark hub here in Kenya. In December, there was a partnership that announced between the DOE and Kenya, where the DOE in the US would support Kenya in creating a dark hub, and that was announced during the US Africa Leadership Summit in December. And though we are yet to see the details that come out of that, but that's a great signal to everyone in the market. There was also recently a national carbon removal workshop, which was touted as being the first of its kind, and it was held here in Nairobi, Kenya, and the plan is to create a framework for doing high durability CDR in Kenya. And the Kenyan government has also seen this and taken a keen interest. We do not have a defined policy as yet, but there is a climate change act that is currently in the public consultation stage, where we're being asked to contribute to the key outcomes of this act. And the one key interest is going to be creating a verification framework for carbon dioxide removal. And the government has seen this as an opportunity to build our industries, to develop. Kenya is a developing country, and it's an opportunity for us to develop our country on the back of a green new industry, just as other countries have been able to develop their nations on their natural resources. We do not have natural resources in that typical sense, but what we have is a potential, and particularly in renewable energy, to use carbon dioxide removal as a way to develop our economies and to create employment. And that's why Octavia was started in Kenya, and we hope to scale the industry for the world and also for our country, Kenya. And I'm excited to talk more with my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Duncan. It's so exciting to me to see the progress that Octavia Carbon is making, and really inspiring to see all of the things that are happening in Kenya. That your country is taking such an important leadership role, not only in developing the markets, but also the policy, bringing the community together, bringing other countries on board as well. So very excited about all of the possibilities that are there. So thank you so much to the three of you for those opening remarks. I want to move into a little Q&A session. And I want to actually start with Representative Tonko. So you talked quite a bit in your opening remarks about the things that have been accomplished in the past few months around CDR, some really fantastic outcomes. I'm curious, in the past few months, since Republicans took control of the House of Representatives, has anything changed in terms of the prospects that you see for meaningful progress on carbon dioxide removal?
Sure. Thanks, Rick. Well, look, let me begin by stating that I've always made an effort to reach across the aisle and work with Republican colleagues. I certainly like to think I have managed to be successful in that effort on some issues, and it's still a guiding concept for me. And while I believe there are some Republicans that support carbon removal, especially for research and development, unfortunately, I believe the vast majority of House Republicans would like to see most climate investments come to an end. For these past 5 months, during this time of a divided Congress, House Democrats have been playing defense. Just last week, House Republicans voted to repeal many sections of the IRA, which was very troubling. I have said this is a non-starter for negotiations to raise the debt ceiling with which they incorporated their thinking. So I hope that Republicans will get more serious about doing our jobs and ensuring that we avoid a national default and really have sound energy policy debate, not linked to important issues like national debt ceiling. But regardless, it is clear the House is unlikely, I believe, to pass any major pro-clean energy and pro-climate policies until after the next election. And so I'll still try to work on the margins to see what we can achieve over the next 18 months. But I also want to be totally frank that the House is not likely to advance major climate legislation in the near term. But that will give us time to continue to develop support for policy initiatives and legislation that I'll be introducing and other pro-climate representatives will be introducing.
My next question is for Megha. Can you talk about Open Air's model of volunteer-led initiatives? And what do you think it is about Open Air's approach that has made your team so effective?
Sure, yeah. So as I kind of mentioned, Open Air is a completely volunteer-based organization. All are welcome to join. And so obviously that comes with some really exciting opportunities, but also some challenges. I think opening this up to so many different people has really given Open Air a chance to leverage all sorts of expertise and make all sorts of connections that just wouldn't have happened otherwise. I mean, CDR, even today, but especially 3 years or so ago when Open Air was founded, is such a new idea. So few people are really familiar with it. That I think there was a real magic in bringing together people who may not have had climate experience or policy experience or technical experience in an area relevant to a particular CDR pathway, but we're just excited and driven and motivated and passionate about these issues. And so we've really had people from all walks of life join Open Air, find their place where they wanted to contribute, and do some really amazing things. And so just that breadth of sort of understanding different areas has really led to some exciting connections and initiatives that have happened throughout Open Air. I think one of the challenges that comes with that, of course, is that you need a good structure and a way for people to engage, to get volunteers from such different walks of life to all work together. And so Open Air has been really thoughtful about structuring the way that the programs are run, that the missions are run, having advocates meet up on a regular basis in different ways on different topics, making sure that people are onboarded well, all these kinds of things. And I think that's been really critical to making sure that as more and more people have come in, that they really find their place and engage and are excited to work on whatever it is they choose to work on. And I think what's really exciting is that model has really worked in both the policy, sort of market development side of things, which I've mentioned, but also in R&D missions where people are building direct air capture machines in their backyards or in their basement. So that policy sort of angle is not the only one where people have been able to collaborate and do really cool things. Another thing that I think has really helped is to just be conscious of setting up a good toolkit. So Open Air has this idea of what they call viral policy, the idea being that if we set up a really good policy and introduce it in one jurisdiction, others will take notice and they might adopt a similar policy or they might be inspired by it. But policies can sort of take on this life of their own. And to do that, I think one way of making it really easy for that to happen is to set up a toolkit. So basic resources, FAQs, provisions and clauses of the policy that people can easily access and sort of build on. And so Open Air has been really thoughtful about doing that as well. And so a lot of our work is on GitHub or different places that can be widely accessed and sort of replicated or repurposed in different jurisdictions or for different purposes. One policy is not going to fit every single market and every single area that we might want to introduce CDR policy into, but it can serve as the basis and inspiration for some of the research and some of the sort of mechanisms that might apply in more than one place. I think the last thing really is that OpenAir has thought a lot about how to make these policies viral, how to just promote these ideas to the widest audience, and not just thinking of it within the narrow lens of how can we get this policy introduced in this and this and this jurisdiction, but really how do we more broadly spread these ideas about what CDR even is and get people to understand that, so that if a CDR policy is introduced in their local state or local area or their country, that they already have the first step to understanding what that means and hopefully being in support of it. And so OpenAir really goes beyond just the policy development in educating people, having different sort of programs and areas where people can learn about CDR, putting together resources. And I think over time that really builds up the support of these different policies that we over time hope to enact.
Great, thank you. And just something of a follow-up there. I imagine there are a number of people watching this recording right now who are thinking, wow, OpenAir sounds really exciting. I love joining a winning team, but I'm not a CDR expert. I don't know that much. What would you say to someone like that? And another part of that question is, how do people start to get involved? What's the first step?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is that you absolutely don't need to be a CDR expert. So like I said, I think the real beauty of OpenAir is bringing together people who may not be CDR or even climate experts, but have something else to contribute. We've had people who are lawyers in a very different field, but are able to contribute their legal expertise to, writing provisions of policy. We've had people who have project management experience who help just move these sort of projects forward and make sure that deadlines are met and things like that. Really anyone, I think, can contribute in one way or another. And so if you're interested in CDR, I really encourage you to join OpenAir, engage with some of the people who have been around a bit longer, and just find whatever way suits kind of you and OpenAir to get started. There's so many different things going on. If you have an idea of a way to engage, you're in a country maybe that OpenAir hasn't really touched yet, I think everyone there would be really excited to hear from you. In terms of logistics of joining, you can find us at openaircollective.cc, I believe, and there sort of is all the information for how to join. We mainly communicate on Discord, which is where you'll find all the different channels and chats about different missions that are happening, and can sort of get onboarded into the community.
All right, fantastic. My next question is for Duncan. Duncan, I know that you and your colleague at Octavia Carbon are visiting various parts of the United States this month. I'm just curious what you are accomplishing and what you're hoping to accomplish through these visits to the U.S.
Yes, we are visiting various locations in the US, and our goal primarily is to talk to customers. That is the people who would purchase carbon credits from us. The beauty of that is we can develop the technology in Kenya and deploy it in Kenya, and we can sell it internationally. We can sell it internationally to customers all around the world. So talking to customers, learning about their requirements. As an engineer, I would like to also learn about how what sort of expectations they have of direct air capture machines. I'm sure not many people have seen a dark machine, and that feeds into my design. But beyond that, we're also hoping to speak to investors. Now, a lot of the CDR space and engineered CDR space is concentrated in the US, and the US is a leader in that front in terms of investment and policy. and also most of the customers are there, and that's why we are doing this US roadshow. We are also seeing this as an opportunity to also learn from other people. There are many DAC companies in the US, and DAC is still a nascent industry. It's still a small and growing industry, and it's an industry where the players tend to talk to each other and to share ideas and to exchange notes. And so we are also meeting and learning from a few others, as well as sharing our own knowledge from our experience, a few other dark companies and people from those companies.
All right. My next question is for Representative Tonko. Are you planning to reintroduce the Carbon Dioxide Removal Leadership Act in the current Congress? If so, why? If not, why not?
Okay, well, the answer to your question, Rick, is yes, I do. I would like to reintroduce the Carbon Removal Leadership Act later this year. And as to the why, well, I see legislation, or legislating, I should state, as an iterative process. So since we're not successful in getting this bill enacted last year, we now have an opportunity to make changes to the policy and improve the legislation, grow awareness before it's reintroduced in 2023. This is a great opportunity for us to take stock of what's changed. How have technologies improved, or how have costs come down? And how can we get more members of Congress and stakeholder groups excited about this effort? These are all part of reassessing the bill and figuring out how just we can make this version even stronger. But I hope it will be reintroduced before our August recess. But we will utilize the time from now to then, when it's reintroduced, to really work on growing awareness, improving the legislation if necessary, and just engaging those stockholders who are shareholders that are invested in this area policy-wise or as businesses. So it's a great opportunity to really grow the interest in the whole concept.
Fantastic. My next question is for Megha. So, of course, every bit of progress that we make on CDR is important. But I'm curious if there's one progress piece that excites you the most. And another kind of sub question there is, which country do you see as being the most amenable to adopting deeply meaningful CDR policy, and which country do you see as being the most influential?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the thing that really excites me, sort of at a broad level, is just seeing CDR policy introduced at all in so many different countries. I think the last year is really the first time we've seen not just one country, but multiple places around the world introduce something explicitly naming CDR or explaining what the plan for CDR is. And I think that's just, a step change from where we've been in years before. In terms of the countries that are moving forward the fastest, I mean, I think I would be remiss not to mention the US as kind of the leader here, not just because Representative Tonko has been on this panel, but also really just, the bills he mentioned, the infrastructure law, the DAC hubs that have been sort of put forward by the DOE, the Inflation Reduction Act, all of these things have just put an unprecedented amount of investment into CDR and CDR technology. And so I think that's just going to accelerate the development of these technologies, the development of companies who are building this technology. And so financially, I think it's a complete change from where we've been before, and it's going to make the US a real leader in that space. I think another really great thing in the US is it's not just an amount of money being thrown at the problem, but there are really people at the highest levels in the DOE, in Congress, who really understand CDR and where it fits into the broader climate picture and have a more nuanced understanding of what needs to be done, how to do it responsibly, and are building that into the laws that are being put forward. In the UK as well, I think there's real progress. That's where I live, and so I can speak to that a little bit. But there is an explicit pathway of targets of how many megatons of carbon the UK wants to remove in 2030, 2035, and so forth. Now, that's not enshrined, I believe, into law yet, but it is laid out in the UK's net zero strategy. And so that's one of the earliest countries to actually lay out explicit targets for CDR over the next several years. I think Switzerland has done something similar, getting to an idea of what it would take to get to net zero and actually putting numbers to that over the next coming decades. There's also some really exciting things coming out of Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. I think less developed perhaps on the specifics than we're seeing in the UK and Switzerland, but really exciting to see those countries engaging. And I think Open Air is actually hosting some events in those different countries, trying to sort of push that forward and really see what can happen on the policy front in those countries going forward. But the thing I think that's really important is that we're still at such an early stage of all of this. And really, I think any country that does something really radical, really puts their weight behind CDR can have a big impact. And so I'm really excited to see what might come out of some smaller countries where maybe politically it's not as difficult, or where it might just be more straightforward to enact a really sort of stake in the ground carbon dioxide removal policy, and how that might trigger larger countries to sit up and take notice and maybe reevaluate their own position on CDR. So I think it's too early to tell who's going to be the most influential, but I'm really excited for this idea that Open Air has a viral policy where a policy somewhere triggers the rest of the world to take notice, for that to take effect over the next few years and decades. And I hope that that's going to be the case.
Fantastic. Thank you, Megha. So my next question is for Duncan. We've heard quite a bit in this panel so far about the government of Kenya and their support for CDR. When we're dealing with the problem of climate change, this has been caused largely by greenhouse gas emissions that have primarily come from large industrialized nations like the US, more recently China. So in your opinion, why is it so important that Kenya is taking a leadership role in establishing and deploying climate solutions?
Well, fundamentally, we're experiencing the effects of that climate change here in Kenya. And though Kenya and many other African countries did not contribute to the problem in as large a scale, we are experiencing the effects today. Kenya has experienced one of the longest droughts it had till like a month ago, and my community, the community I come from, has experienced those effects particularly starkly as a farming community. And the fact that we are experiencing those effects here leads us to actually taking a role in solving the problem. It's in our best interest to solve a problem, though we do not contribute to the problem. And our line here, and it's the line of many policymakers here in Kenya and ourselves at Octavia, is always is that we have to solve the problem. We might not have been the ones who contributed to it, but we have these natural endowments, and particularly our renewable energy, which can grow this space quite significantly and can allow our economy here in Kenya to develop on the back of something green and something sustainable. And that's why many policymakers, the envoy of climate change in Kenya came when we were still a much smaller team. Octavia currently has 20 people, and at that time I think we were still 8. And he came just to learn about DAC and to see what the government of Kenya can do to support the space and to grow the industry. And it's an opportunity to create employment, because we have a very young population in Kenya, and most of Africa is quite young, and and our populations are still growing. All these young people will need jobs, and they will need jobs in an industry that is not contributing to the problem that we already have right now. And so this is an opportunity to create green jobs for our young people, and this will be jobs that will help us grow into high-income nations like the US and many other countries in Europe.
That's great. What a great answer. And I couldn't agree more. I'm really, really excited that that Octavia is laying the groundwork for that to happen. And be the model not only for Kenya, but for other countries around Africa and around the world. And my last question for Representative Tonko is, I know in the Carbon Removal Leadership Act, it talks about carbon removal generally. I'm curious whether you personally have any favorite CDR methods, whether it's something that is just fascinating and inspiring to you, or something that you think holds a great deal of promise to eventually capture and sequester gigatons per year of carbon.
Well, Rick, I think the beauty of this whole moment is that there's an opportunity for us to engage the pioneer spirit of innovation. I think my country is deeply invested in that pioneer spirit as part of our DNA. And here's a golden opportunity for us to really think boldly and think deep. But I think direct air capture is going to be a novel concept for us to get that last 10%, which is a huge challenge. And I constantly work and will continue to work on engaging my colleagues in understanding that this is not a reducing of our commitment to go forward aggressively and robustly to address carbon that we're pumping into the atmosphere as we speak, but to also see it as a complementary tool. So I think direct air capture and any of these innovations going on, I know that our labs are rich with projects and ideas that will come forward. But however it's manufactured, however it's finally determined, or whatever the options may be, and there will probably be several options, it will get us to that last 10%. And we just need to educate and inform people that research here is vitally important, that we're not displacing our efforts to reduce carbon, but rather we're going to need this tool as we narrow and come to the very end of the stretch of our journey. So direct air capture is probably one that will really take us down that road too.
Thanks so much. Okay, so Megha, over to you on your favorite CDR method.
You know what? I hate to play favorites. And my genuine answer to this is I think we're so early in sort of the development stage. We kind of just need to fire all our resources at doing everything at once. I mean, each form of CDR has its pros and cons and its knowns and unknowns. And I think when we're at, 0.0001% of the volume that we need to be doing according to IPCC reports, we don't really have an idea of what's going to win or what's going to lose. There could be some huge scale emergent property that comes out that we have no idea about yet, that we find out in 5 or 10 years. And so to me, the crucial thing really is just, full steam ahead on all fronts, and just give us some time and resources to actually figure out what works, what scales, what costs an amount that we're able to pay, and go from there. So I have not answered your question, but that is my honest answer.
No, that's perfectly all right. I mean, it's okay for every CDR method to be not necessarily your favorite, but one that you think deserves more R&D and could make a huge difference. I think I totally agree with you that we're at that early stage, and we can't really afford to take anything off the table at the moment. Duncan, how about you? I know that you work in DAC. So either tell me a little bit about why you chose DAC, why DAC is so exciting to you, or any other CDR methods that you're familiar with that you think are particularly exciting.
Yes, just to echo what Megha said, I think we need to make investments in all these solutions right now if we are to achieve our goals of limiting warming to 1.5. And yes, my favorite CDR method is dark. I work in dark. That's what I wake up every day doing. And there are trade-offs. Each method has its own advantages and disadvantages. And so I'm constantly thinking about how to solve the problems around dark. Dark is my favorite because it offers an opportunity not just to remove the carbon that's in the air right now, but it also offers us an opportunity to change our relationship with carbon. And currently we have a linear carbon economy, as we call it, where we take CO2 from the ground, we create products, and at the end of their life, we burn them off, they're in the air, or if it's fuels, we burn them and it's in the air. And that's what's causing the problem. But there is an opportunity to create a sustainable carbon economy, which will be circular. And we've put all this CO2 in the air, which is a rich carbon source. And we can draw down that CO2, create products, hydrocarbons, synthetic hydrocarbons like fuels, e-fuels, and plastics. And we can use those plastics, and we'll never stop needing them, even beyond 2050 when we are net zero. And we use those products and continuously circulate that carbon in there. That's more sustainable, and that will be a solution for industries that are really hard to abate, like long-haul aviation. And that's the opportunity DAC presents us in a world where we have really cheap air-captured CO2, which we are working towards at Octavia, and really cheap renewable energy, which will continuously come online in a country like Kenya, and cheap hydrogen. That is an economy that we can very sustainably create. And even larger than that, in Kenya, a solution like DAC, which is energy intensive right now, creates a baseload demand for energy. And so it's counterintuitive, but by us deploying in Kenya, we create the demand that then increases the need for supply of renewable energy. And Kenya is very heavy on renewable energy. So that in itself will create energy access for individuals and people who do not have a high baseload demand, like me as an individual in my house. That will create greater access to renewable energy in the future, and that's a clear path to creating opportunities for people, economic opportunities for people, and to growing my country Kenya into a high-income nation. So yeah, that's why DAC is my favorite.
Great, thanks so much. Great explanation. Okay, so now I want to turn it over to Representative Tonko for his closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Rick Wayman, for the invitation, and thank you for the leadership that you and the Foundation for Climate Restoration provide as we look at all perspectives of this response to global climate change, and obviously a great contribution that you're all making. Certainly, I was encouraged to hear the work done by my fellow panelists, knowing that there is response from other nations, knowing that within the U.S., there are those states that are doing their complementary policies that will enable us to do this in as grand a fashion as possible. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of collaborative efforts. And so encouraging to hear that coming from the panel, and knowing that the work done by Duncan also stands as inspiration for all of us, to know that other countries are stepping up to the plate. We cannot afford to go backward, roll backward. We need only to go forward. So thank you to all the advocates who are out there doing their thing, rolling up their sleeves and preaching clean air and a clean energy agenda and a robust attempt to decarbonize. And, we all have a critical role here in enacting and protecting what are ambitious and urgent climate policies. Our efforts combined, working as a team here, will make a big difference if we inform and educate to the nth degree, letting people know what this whole effort is about, that there's a lot of carbon to remove from our atmosphere, and that getting to that finish line and across the finish line will require every tool in the toolkit. And today's session reminds us that there's that last 10% that will draw our attention and our involvement, but we can't wait till that last 10% is approached. We need to put our efforts into research and development, prototype management, and turning those concepts into manufactured ideas so that we can be there up and ready when we're called upon. Thank you, everybody. I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Rick, for bringing us all together. To my fellow panelists, look forward to being together with you in person. And let's go conquer the climate challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Representative Tonko. Really appreciate your time, and again, really grateful for your leadership. So now I want to turn it over to Megha for any closing thoughts, closing remarks that you have.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think my main sort of takeaway from the last year is really just seeing how much CDR has sort of stepped up and come into its own in so many different arenas. I mean, the number of companies that have exploded into the space, but also the policy developments, the sort of recognition on the international stage that this is something that the world is going to need. And I think those of us who sort of live and breathe CDR on a daily basis have been thinking this and saying this for a few years now, but it's starting to feel like it's more widely acknowledged that this is going to be part of the solution. And, we need to go full steam ahead on decarbonization, but we also need to do the same on thinking about ways to remove carbon dioxide from our atmosphere and sort of restore the climate to where it used to be and where it should be. And so I'm just really excited that, panels like this are out there kind of putting forward the latest and greatest and what's going on in CDR, that we have people in government at the US, like Representative Tonko, pushing forward that agenda in the legislative space, people like Duncan actually building the technology to do it. It really feels like there's movement and progress on this, and that gives me a lot of hope. So thank you all for having me on this. It's been really wonderful to be here.
Thanks very much, Megha. Duncan, over to you for closing thoughts.
Yes, I'd first like to really thank everyone for being here and for hosting this great session, this great panel session. Africa and Kenya and Africa are often seen as purely victims of climate change. And though we are victims of climate change, we also have resources and natural endowments that we can use to combat climate change. And that's what we are doing here in Kenya. And that's our goal at Octavia, to harness our natural endowments to solve the greatest problem of our time. And climate change is a global problem, and so it does need a global solution. And so we invite you people to come to Kenya. We invite everyone who's interested in learning about DAC or even interested in combating climate change. You're welcome to Kenya, and you're welcome to see what we do at Octavia. And we hope to collaborate with everyone who's really interested in solving this problem. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Duncan. And thank you again to all three of our presenters today, Representative Paul Tonko, Megha Ragavan, and Duncan Kairuki. I know that I'm taking away a lot of inspiration from today. It feels good to have wins, and I'm really glad that you all were here to celebrate some of these with us, and think about what is next. What can we win on next? So look forward to collaborating with all of you moving into the future. And just one announcement here for the forum. We've got a 15-minute break coming up right now. And then we're going to go into a workshop led by F4CR's Director of Civic Engagement, Terry Pugh, and her colleague in Washington State, Mike Robinson, on how to advocate, how to be effective advocates for climate restoration. So I hope you'll join us then. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you soon.